The Boldest. This is a game by Stronghold Games. It is set in a fantasy slash sci-fi world. It looks fantasy because it is set in the future and there are these robots that go around and they have become a different kind of prey that the heroes want to hunt. Instead of dragons or goblins, then you have these machines that look like they were created thousands of years before and they're still going around not knowing exactly what the heck they're doing. It reminds me a little bit of the setting of the video game Horizon Zero Dawn, if you played that game. Mechanically, the Boldest combines very different elements. It is a card game with a hand management element. It even has a deck building element, as in fact the cards that are available to you will change during the game. You will acquire new cards, you will remove some cards, and then most importantly, most of everything else, more than the other element, is it is a bluffing game. You need to try to figure out what other players are doing so that you don't waste things, waste resources doing things, and then you can actually try to outsmart the other players in certain departments. I'm keeping it vague so that I don't give you too many spoilers before I show you more in detail how the Boldest works. The game is played around this board here, which is used to organize two types of cards, forest cards and adventurer cards. The forest cards are placed in a grid like the one that you see here, and for game purposes it is important that you remember that this side of the grid represents the top of the forest and this side the bottom. This is important, remember that now. As for the forest cards, there are three types. We have monsters with an orange edge, artifacts with a purple edge, and then items with a light blue one. Some forest cards may have a white icon in the bottom right corner that represents a requirement. Usually you need to discard an item with that icon to be able to acquire the corresponding card. And then we have cards that produce icons, in which case the icon is colored in black with a light blue outline. The numbers that you see in the top left corner of the cards represent the number of experience points that you acquire by acquiring the card. That means victory points equal victory points. This is what you need to do during the game to acquire as many cards as possible with as high a number of points as possible. The crosshair symbol that you see on some of those cards, that only comes into play when you use certain adventurers to acquire those cards. Speaking of the adventurers, here we have the area of the board where you will place a number of adventure cards coming out of that deck. There's also another deck to use later, and those adventurers players will acquire them during the game and will add them to their pool of heroes. Here we have a stack of cards that simply represent turns, or maybe I should say rounds. The game lasts a number of days. Each day is a round. At the end of each day of adventure, you will remove a card. After the next day of adventure, you remove another one. When you have no cards left there, that signals the end of the game, or should say, it signals the beginning of the last turn. And the last turn has a special rule, and you have a reminder of that special rule in that icon there. For I can tell you that the last day, cooks count as warriors. And it's a little mysterious, but remember that, and then maybe that will make sense later. Here we have a line of banners. You place them randomly at the beginning of the game next to this cardboard aid here. It represents the king's tent. These banners are used to break ties. When there is a tie for scoring between two players, the player that has their banner the closest to the king's tent wins the tie. For example, these two players with those two symbols are tied for whatever it is, and then this player will win the tie. When you win a tie, you get at the bottom, so you're not gonna win any ties for a while. And yeah, you also have an area where you can store the forest cards that are not being used yet. Each player has a screen that also includes a reminder of the icon of that player, very important, remember, for the tiebreaker. Behind the screen, each player hides a planning board. Each day of the game, that is each round, there will be 3 expeditions. The player will use cards from their personal deck to plan those expeditions. Each player starts with a set of cards that represent different types of adventurers. The type of adventurer that the card represents is indicated by the icon in the top left corner. These are hunters, these are warriors, then we have cooks, technicians, and pets. Oh, it's very neat. And the art is just so pleasant, so very nice. You will have a set of cards available to you, and here you have a little area where you store the cards that are available for planning at the beginning of each day. The cards that you will actually use during a day will then, after you use them, placed face up in this area here. So they're going to party after an adventure in the forest. So at the beginning of the day, you take the cards that are available here, and then you may as well just place these cards there as a reminder that they will be available the following turn. But now when you're planning, you now have to use only the ones that you have in your hand. That is to say, for each time that you use a card for an adventure, it will be unavailable for the following day. Remember, you may also acquire cards from the central area. What I showed you are the initial cards. These cards still have an icon here indicating the type of adventure that is, but also at the bottom they may have other icons that may be extra icons of the type that the card represents, or it may give you different types of advantages. Now, also here we have an area in front of this player right here where you simply place the objects, the items that you acquired. Each player starts with a set of 2 items that will produce icons that are used to acquire cards that require those icons. Now, at the beginning of a day, each player prepares three parties for 3 expeditions. A party for an expedition is any number of cards of the same type. So you may have a hunter's expedition, a warrior's expedition, a cook expedition, and so on and so forth. Pets can be assigned to any expedition. You can think of them as wilds. Once you prepare the expedition, you will place it in a deck or in a stack face down like so. When it is time to resolve the expedition, you will flip it face up, you will fan it like this so that the top left corner of all cards is available, and also the one that will be visible at that point, the one that is fully visible, is the leader of your expedition. That means that you will use in a party all of the icons in the top left corner of the cards, plus the icons at the bottom of the card that is in front, and that one only. This is the case, this is the leader, this is my party of warriors, now this is the leader, and these are the icons that I can use. And so you do like that for all 3 expeditions. Once players have organized, planned their 3 expeditions, you can remove the deck and then, the screen, and then players reveal their parties. Then each type of hero will try to go, but for each hero, only the party that has the most of that kind will be able to go. You follow the order indicated here on the player. That is, first the warriors will try to go to the forest, then technicians, then hunters, and then cooks. Pretty much you go around and say, hey, anybody has warriors? If there's only one player that has a party of that kind, the player will get to go to the forest and acquire cards. If there are multiple players, then you look at the strength of that party, and the strength is indicated by the number of icons of that party that are visible. Right now, that warrior party has a strength of 4. Suppose that the player had placed this card in front. Now that icon is visible too, so now this party has a strength of 5 instead. So only the player with that category with the most strength will get to go. If there's a tie, remember those banners, that's how you break the tie. So, and it's only possible that there will be multiple players with a certain party. It is entirely possible that in a certain category no one has that ability. Suppose that in fact there are multiple players that have a party of that kind. The player with the most will go to the forest. The other players will simply take their cards and put them here face down, which means they'll be immediately available the next day. The player, however, that won, that will get to go, first discards the leader. The leader will get to be used only once, and you can discard them in the king's stand. And then the player will get to acquire a card. And each type of category acquires cards differently. But this is pretty much how you do each day. You resolve all parties in order, then everybody reveals their second party. And again, you check to see who goes and who doesn't, and so on and so forth. That means that for each expedition, there will be a variable number of parties that will adventure in the forest. If, for example, everybody chose warriors, then, well, only one player will get to go that turn, and everybody else will simply get to store their cards there. If, say, for a certain expedition, say the first one, I select the warriors, and Aaron selected technicians, and Jim selected hunters, and Frank selected cooks, then in this order we will all get to go. And suppose that Kira has selected also warriors, then whoever has selected warriors will get to go. That means in each expedition you will have between 1 and 4 people actually going, depending on how many people selected each type of expedition. The different types of parties acquire cards in different ways. And here you have a good reminder. The warriors will acquire a monster, can acquire a monster or an item from the bottom row of the forest, which is, if you remember, this one here. So for example, with this, if I want the warrior contest, I can take this one here and put it in my score pile. I could take this one. Also, if I had the corresponding item, which I happen to have, so I discard this one and enable to acquire this one. But remember, from the bottom row. Technicians similarly can acquire an artifact or an item from the bottom row. And maybe I have a technician who wants to get that one because it's A5 and so it's not that bad. Hunters. Hunters are peculiar. Hunters will try to acquire cards that have the crosshair symbol. Hunters can get up to 3 cards from a single column, well, from where we're sitting, from a single row of cards, up to 3 cards as long as they are of different type. That is, they can acquire up to 1 monster, 1 artifact, and 1 item. If I am shooting with my hunter in this row here, I could acquire these 2, or these 2, or, or these 2, or those 2, because I saw that there's another one with a crosshair there. And I'm looking at the board now, and I don't see any. Oh yeah, look at that. There is a row there that would allow us to have an artifact and a monster and an item. I don't know if you see there's a cross here there, and an item right there. So this is how the hunters work. Differently, definitely. And they don't have to be restricted just to the bottom row. By the way, you probably have started seeing some strategy here, because I could try to use one of my heroes to open a certain slot, and then in the next expedition to see if I am the hero, the party that goes again, and they can acquire that one. So you can try to clean up and open up some paths with one expedition and then take advantage of it in a later one. Cooks. If you are the winner of the contest for the best cook expedition, then you will simply get to draw 2 of these cards face up. So you can choose 2 face-up cards here and you add them to your personal pool. I like the fact that these adventurers are attracted not necessarily by treasure and glory, but by good cuisine. It is cooks that attract heroes into your party. Who knew that fantasy adventurers could be such gourmands? Oh, another important thing, if you do not get to go because your party is not the strongest in its category, again, your cards that you use don't count as spent, so they're placed there. So they're available immediately next turn, but you also get a random adventurer from the deck face down into your pool. And pretty much this is how it works. For each day you resolve, well, you prepare 3 missions and then you resolve however many actual expeditions there are, because for each expedition, for each phase, there can be up to 4 actual missions. You do that 3 times and then a day is over. You repeat that for the 5 days of the game, and at that point, at the end of the last day of the adventure, the player with the most victory points from the cards that they acquired is the winner of the game. So we like it. We like this game quite a bit. My group really enjoyed it. At the beginning it was a little confusing as we read the rule book. We had several players, including me, worrying about, but you don't really get to do much in this game if you're not the leader of the expedition. If you don't get to go, then there's nothing you can do. But each day you have several chances of going. You are gonna go on an expedition pretty much every day. You're gonna go at least once, and if you don't, well, it's still fun to see what other players are doing. It's fun to get new cards and plan your strategy for the future, and you really want to pay attention to what other players are doing, because of course knowing, getting a sense of what they just used and so what it is that you cannot use next time is a huge element of the game. In fact, the game has interesting layers of strategy. There's a vast random element, mind you, in the cards that you get. If in fact you fail to go on an expedition, then you get a random card. And frankly, there's only so much planning that you can do. In that case, it's not exactly random, but when you have 4 other players that are making decisions secretly and you don't know what those are, it feels like random. Functionally, those are elements that you cannot control. You don't know in advance. It works is in a random fashion. In fact, I would say if you're playing with lower numbers of players, then you can remember what everybody's doing and the game feels more tactical. The larger number of players, you're not going to be able to remember what everybody else has played and they cannot play, and so you're going to go more in a Zen fashion. I hope that my friend is not going to put 10 points in that kind of expedition, is not going to go all out with hunters and so on and so forth. So it has an element, it has definitely an element of strategy again. You have to deal with the randomness with a lot of players, but you're still trying to figure out what to do and to create combos. I want to clear the column, and so I can get that thing that is next, but to do so I need to make sure that I win both expeditions. Or maybe there's one expedition I think pretty much is obvious that my friend is gonna get that thing, is gonna free that one, so I'm not gonna invest in that mission. I'm gonna invest a lot in the mission that gets the thing that is gonna free it up later, hoping that in fact you're the one that does that. Maybe it's even the same turn, because I think you're gonna take that card with a class that goes before, and so the next turn the next class in the same turn, I'm gonna go and get something else. So you can try to sequence things between turns, so within the same turn. There's a lot of fun doing that. What I'm trying to say is that there are definitely strategic and tactical decisions that you're making. It's a game that you do get the sense that good planning and good gameplay is rewarded. At the same time, because of the elements you can control, and because of that element that the information is revealed so suddenly, it has moments in which it almost feels like a party game, because you're gonna have people that did all the planning and then you reveal the cards and you're short by one and you go like this and the people are cheering, yes, I get to go. There are just these emotional outbursts that maybe you wouldn't have in other games, in which everything happens on the board, everything is clear, you see the climax, it's all like boom, 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 these surprises. Am I gonna get it or not? Am I gonna go or not? And you're gonna have some crazy moments in which, in fact, a player thought that he or she was gonna go and somebody else went all out, or somebody thought they were gonna go and they made a mistake in planning the party. And so it's a weird experience, but a definitely pleasant one, in which gameplay is rewarded, and then you have these crazy moments where people are laughing, cheering, friendly banter, or not so friendly banter, but still banter that is enjoyable overall. It's a game that changes every time because of the crazy way in which the cards will appear on the board, not just from game to game, but from round to round, and even within each round, as in fact people will take certain cards and free up other cards. So it's a game that has a lot of good things. The art is fantastic. Everybody really enjoyed that art, gameplay, the kind of interactions that you have, everything very pleasant. We definitely enjoyed the Boldest. It's a really fun game. I recommend it for game night. It may feel a little bit disorienting at the beginning, but it's definitely a light game in the sense of the rules that you have to learn. If you're gonna play with casual players, just warn them a little bit not to feel overwhelmed as you learn what the different classes do. Because it's a pretty simple game to play, but the gameplay generates and the kind of experience it generates are definitely fun and very enjoyable. The Boldest by Stronghold Games. Fun game.